things off the printer. If you see me disappear.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Nicholson. I'm the Interim Dean in the Faculty of IT here at Monash University. I'll begin by respectfully asking you to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I and many of you will be meeting from today, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all located today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this celebration. So welcome everyone to the launch of the Monash Centre for Learning Analytics, CoLAM. This is a very exciting initiative for Monash University. As we all know, there are unprecedented amounts of data collected by technology in education settings every day. Learning analytics reveal valuable hidden insights from this information to enhance learning outcomes and environments. So our new centre, CoLAM, is the first specialised centre in learning analytics in Australia. It's actually been going for a little while, delayed a little bit in the launch due to COVID, and it already has around 30 full-time members and 25 affiliates. CoLAM also works with a number of partners and looks forward to new collaboration opportunities in a wide range of sectors, such as schools, governments, professional and accreditation organisations, hospital systems, defence and technology, the whole spectrum. So the aim for CoLAM, for our new centre, is to develop a research program that will empower learners for the age of AI by conducting innovative research on analytics for assessment and feedback, analytics for curriculum innovation and employment, and analytics for decision-making in complex educational contexts. Also, CoLAM will bring on new postgraduate courses through the launch of a new grad cert and grad diploma in early 2022, so we're excited about that. And we're also looking, of course, at making sure that the great work that our colleagues in CoLAM do will support analytics-informed innovation in education here at Monash University. We have a number of great example projects already that are being supported by research funding. We have a Data Smart Schools supported by the ARC. We have a human-centred teamwork analytics in simulation-based learning for healthcare professions, which is also supported by the ARC. And we have a Centre for Learning and Living in the Age of AI supported by the Jacobs Foundation. They're all examples of the funded research that CoLAM's participating in. So CoLAM is led by a pioneer and world-leading researcher in learning analytics, our colleague, Professor Dragan Gasevic. We're going to hear from Dragan later on. So I think they're my introductory remarks about CoLAM. So now, in order to move on to the actual launch, it's my pleasure to introduce, to that opening is to introduce Senator Van. Senator Van is a senator for Victoria and is here representing the Minister for Education. I've also found out that Senator Van is a current Monash student, as he's currently enrolled in a Master of International Relations. So it's my great pleasure now to hand over to Senator Van.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Professor Nicholson. And I'd also like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm currently on, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today as well. And I'd also like to acknowledge all the distinguished guests on this call, of which there are many. And thank you for inviting me to take part of the official launch of the Centre for Learning Analytics at Monash. I'd quickly like to touch on the very mission of this centre. When you go on the centre's website, one of the first things that you see is the words, harnessing data to advance human learning. And I think that this is incredibly important. As someone who is a believer in the notion that we must never stop learning, I think it's incredibly important that as technology and society progresses, how we learn, teach and think must also progress with it. As the professor pointed out, I'm currently trying to complete a Masters of International Relations at Monash, which hopefully will get done in the next couple of months. Now that the parliamentary year is finished, I'm even hoping to get out onto campus. The 2 years I've been doing my Masters, I've only been out, I've been to 2 lectures on campus. All the rest has been online, which has been, with the schedules that we lead, has been somewhat helpful, but missed out on some of that great university culture and being able to meet with people. And yes, this time around, everyone had laptops in some rooms, were equipped with TVs or smartboards. But the very essence of learning is much the same. We've seen in almost every sector of society the benefits reaped from advancements in technology, from automation of increased computation powers. However, as I've said before, learning and the way we learn has remained relatively unchanged. COVID-19 forced education providers to undertake a massive pivot to learning online. We saw how difficult that was for many people. While so much was achieved in such a short time to get classes and learning done online, our education system was exposed to the reality that we simply were not prepared for such a transformational shift. I understand that the Centre already has a world-class team that is committed to creating world-class research that will support analytics-informed innovation at Monash University. The age of artificial intelligence requires that individuals be equipped with critical skills that will enable them to be highly adaptive in a fast-changing world. As widespread use is inevitable, we must ask whether today's learners are actually ready, and what can we do to help people transition. And this is why I'm so excited to hear about the work that is being undertaken at the Centre for Learning Analytics, the first specialised centre in learning analytics in Australia. As the largest institute in the world that specialises in learning analytics, this centre is well placed to deliver world-class research in the field. Already, unprecedented amounts of data are collected by technology in education settings every day. Learning analytics allows us to dig deeper into this data, to go beyond the surface information and reveal valuable hidden insights to enhance learning outcomes in environments now and in the future. Learning analytics is how we will shape the future of learning. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is forecast to be transformative in its impact on humanity. Given the prominence now assigned to AI, it is inevitable the classroom practices will be impacted and all knowledge work will eventually be influenced by AI. By developing research programs to empower learners in the age of AI, the Centre has the potential to shape the lives of learners from around the globe and prepare them for the future, which will likely be dominated by a vast array of technologies. As important as AI will be in our future, at the very heart of learning is the student. Human-centred analytics, analytics for feedback and assessment, and analytics for 21st century skills are key areas of expertise that ensure learning is still focused on the student. Learning focused on providing the student with relevant skills in a global learning environment, and analytics that will pave the path for better education and ensure we are progressing society, not just developing new technology. There are many amazing projects that are being undertaken in this centre, such as the Data Smart School, led by Professor Neil Selwyn from Monash University, which is supported through a grant of over $352,000 of Commonwealth funding through the ARC. I'm particularly interested in this project as it aims to investigate the use of digital data in schools to identify ways to improve its capture and use. Data can provide us with unique insights into the way we learn and how we can learn more effectively. By making use of the data we already have available, we can create a better, more efficient learning environment. And this funding shows that our government's commitment to improving research and learning and ensuring Australia is a world leader in research and development. On that note, I'd like to congratulate Professor Dragan Gasevic and the whole team for creating this world-leading facility. I truly look forward to seeing the work that comes out of the Centre of Learning Analytics. By transforming the way we learn, you have the ability to transform the world. The impacts of this can and will be seen in all areas in which they're adopted, and I wish the Centre the best success for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Van. It's great that you've been able to join us here today, and also great that you are currently experiencing that educational environment and you have that personal awareness of the importance of supporting the learning environment with learning analytics. Thank you. So without any further ado, I'm going to now introduce Faculty of IT and Monash University colleague and researcher, a world-leading researcher in learning analytics and the inaugural director of the Monash Centre for Learning Analytics, the director of CoLAM, Professor Dragan Gasevic.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Senator Van, Professor Nicholson, colleagues, guests, and friends. Thank you so much for attending our launch event today. I would like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Monash Faculty of IT and Monash University for the honor to serve as the founding director of the Center for Learning Analytics at Monash, CoLAM, and for supporting us to stay at the forefront of research and innovation in learning analytics. Learning analytics is an exciting new field that aims to transform future of education by harnessing the power of big data. Learning analytics is driven by recent progress in data science and artificial intelligence. It involves gathering, analyzing, and using new forms of digital data from many different sources, such as records of interaction with digital, mobile, and wearable technologies. Our center draws out insights from large amounts of digital data to do big things, such as personalizing support for the development of essential skills for life and work in the age of digitization and artificial intelligence, such as collaboration, information seeking, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. We are also championing data-informed decision and policy making to promote excellence in learning and teaching, and we are inventing new ways for assessment and feedback in real life. The Center for Learning Analytics at Monash is a hub for leading expertise in this area across Monash, Australia, and the world. In our work, we draw on cutting-edge expertise from several fields, such as education, computer science, arts, social sciences, engineering, economics, and healthcare. This just shows how far-reaching learning analytics is. We also partner closely with the organizations and people who are on the front line of education and human development, people who will turn our insights into action. By collaborating with these stakeholders across different sectors and ages, we are able to maximize our reach and impact. The Center for Learning Analytics at Monash focuses on research, innovation, education, and training, not only to transform learning from a research perspective, but also to empower current and future learners, educators, and organizations. Together with our partners, we are solving some of the greatest challenges in education today around quality, equity, inclusion, and employability. We are able to drive targeted IT innovation, engage in high-quality research, provide sound expert advice, host education and training programs that are practical and provide real value and influence educational policies for the better. I'm particularly proud of our new graduate courses in Learning Analytics with a planned launch of the graduate certificate in Learning Analytics in March 2020. The center aims to put insights into action by embedding learning analytics and artificial intelligence in curricula, in schools and universities, and by providing targeted programs for people in different sectors, such as government, schools, universities, non-for-profits, and technology university. Our work in learning analytics will open greater career opportunities and enhance the standard of education globally. We do so by shaping the design of assessment and feedback to enhance how individual and system capabilities are defined and developed. We also influence pedagogy to ensure that future learners gain critical skills such as self-regulation, teamwork, problem-solving, and digital skills. And critically, we inform and implement best practices in data privacy and ethics when it comes to collecting and using learner data. Our center is probably the largest specialized learning analytics institute in the world, with about 30 core researchers already, and staff members, and over 25 additional affiliated researchers. What makes our Center for Learning Analytics is unique is that some of our researchers are true leaders who are shaping the development of the field. The center is led by specialists from the Faculty of IT and the Faculty of Education at Monash University, and brings together expertise from across the university, industry, and the community. The breadth and the depth of the knowledge and experience we have allow us to accelerate the advancement of education. Some of our exemplary projects include Data Smart Schools, that is funded by the Australian Research Council. Masses of digital data are generated within schools every day. But despite of its potential, this data remains poorly used and understood. The project engages schools to develop a comprehensive understanding of how they can leverage digital data and analytic tools to effectively inform decision-making. In some of our other projects, we work with partners in Australia and internationally to help learners to develop skills for independent learning and work in real life through personalized support and feedback in schools, higher education, and workplace by collaborating with partners in Australia, Asia, Europe, and United States. We also work on enriching learning in healthcare by creating better feedback channels for clinical errors and teamwork strategies in collaboration with several hospital systems and specialist medical colleges in Australia and with partners in Europe. And we are developing learning and assessment environments that can offer much authentic, real-life experiences through simulation-based learning and virtual internships. The main objective of our center is to be a national and international leader that promotes excellence in learning analytics by conducting cutting-edge research that is transforming lives of local communities. If you share this vision, we will always welcome to explore new partnership opportunities. So thank you very much for taking the time to attend our today's launch event. At Center for Learning Analytics at Monash, we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Dragan. I think now we have a video to be played.
Learning analytics is changing the future of education by harnessing the power of big data to advance our understanding of human learning, enhance environments where learning occurs. A pioneer in this area, our center draws our insights from unprecedented amounts of data to do big things like personalizing support for the development of important skills for life and work in the age of digitization, championing data-informed decision and policy making, and inventing new ways for assessments and feedback in real-life situations. Together with our partners, we are solving some of the greatest challenges education is currently experiencing around quality, equity, access, justice, and employability.
The center aims to put insights into action by embedding learning analytics in curricula in schools and universities, and by providing targeted programs for people in different sectors, such as government, not-for-profit, and IT. We influence pedagogy to ensure that future learners get essential skills, such as self-regulation, teamwork, problem-solving, and digital skills. Our work in these areas will open greater career opportunities and enhance the standard of education globally, and we adopt a holistic approach to enhance the entire learning process.
What makes the Center for Learning Analytics unique is that our researchers really are pioneers of the field. It's led by specialists from the Faculty of IT and Education at Monash University and draws on capabilities across the university, industry, and community. We are able to drive targeted IT innovations, engage in high-quality research, provide sound expert advice, host training programs that are practical and provide real value.
Some of our big research projects include Data Smart Schools. That's funded by the Australian Research Council. So our project is engaging schools to develop a deep understanding of how they might reuse digital data and tools to make use of this information more effectively. Some of our projects are enriching learning in healthcare by creating better feedback channels for clinical errors, effective experiences and teamwork strategies. And we're also involved in projects that develop learning and assessment environments that offer authentic real-life experiences through simulation-based learning and virtual internships.
In our work, we draw on knowledge from a wide range of fields such as education, computer science, arts, social sciences, engineering, economics, and medicine. We always welcome new partners to collaborate with us in the center and work with us on innovative ways for unlocking the potential of data to enhance education and learning experience.
Okay, great. So at this point, we normally would, when we're opening a centre, we would have a plaque or a something to hand over in person. So it's much trickier when we're doing it in a fully virtual sense. So that is the certificate of opening that Dragan has. That will be this is part of the official launch. So I think at this point, I can say that the centre is now launched. We really are so excited. We're really looking forward to the great things that the CoLAM will be doing. And we also look forward to having many people collaborating with us and including perhaps some of the people participating in this launch today who aren't yet working with us. So at this point, we actually have some time for a Q&A. So I'm going to, if people use the Q&A facility at the bottom, and the first question has come in, so I'm going to pick those up. So just a general one to start with for one of our colleagues, Dragan, Professor Patrick Olivier. What do you see as the main opportunities for learning analytics in higher education in our sector? Yeah.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I think that's a terrific question. Obviously, something that is close to our home as well. My thinking about that is that obviously, in addition to improving and enhancing some of the experiences that we want and aim, such as, for example, trying to help have more personalized feedback and more targeted types of assessments, what I'm actually thinking is that analytics in particular should help us to improve the ways how we are actually looking at the whole curriculum in higher education. So basically from the students entering into higher education to the time they are exiting and also maintaining that relationship. in that sense, thinking about how we can understand how they are going through their experiences, how they are actually going to acquire some relevant skills, and more importantly, also what are those emerging skills as well that are actually needed, not only from the market, but also at the forefront of innovation. So to me, that's probably the most exciting part that analytics can help us to do. The final, I think, important thing is for us is really thinking about how we can make this whole experience, these transitions that learners have, going from schools to higher education, from higher education to workplace, and then within workplace. And the way how analytics can help us basically smooth that experience, understand what people are going through and what are their needs.
Thanks. So we've got another question, and it's related to assessment. But in addition to using learning analytics to, I guess, to find out in the assessment what the learner has learned, and then feeding that back in, I think this question is around some of the practical side of the marking of assignments and how AI can help with that, particularly when there's some judgment and so on. So what's been done to address using AI to auto-mark narrative and analytical assignments more than just the more straightforward ones, and to, of course, go that step further and give feedback. I'd like to make some comments on that, Dragan.
Yeah, of course. That's a terrific question. We already have seen a fair bit of progress in the areas of automatic essay scoring, and we've seen some already even practical applications. What we haven't seen, though, in practice is that these type of approaches is commonly and routinely used in higher education or in schools, for that matter. I think we need to be open to accept some of these things. We already have certain technologies that are achieving very high level of accuracy. But at the same time, we also need to be very careful in a way that we develop new ways how these type of AI-driven systems for marking are actually best coupled with effective teaching practices, and how we make sure that some of our teaching staff are also incorporating them into their regular practice. That's number one. Number two is also basically making sure that these algorithms are also still tested for their fairness, and making sure whenever we are doing and implementing these type of algorithms that we are not potentially putting certain disadvantage on certain subpopulations of our learners. So I think that's basically a fairly open area for research, and we need to do a fair bit of work. The final point I want to make sure is that we should not be just focusing on giving students the grades, but rather we should be focusing on the ways as well how learners can improve their learning in the future. And there's already a fair bit of interesting work happening across the world and here in Australia as well on the ways how that improvement can happen.
Just following on from that mention of fairness, we've got a question relating to broader ethics, and in particular, in what sense do you think the learner's data belongs to the learner, and how should we manage the ethics around that, and what are the benefits and risks depending on where that, how much permission we get, how much belongs to the learner, and how much we take as educators?
It's a terrific question. It's one of the core, basically, the field of learning analytics, and I think also something that is attracting lots of international attention, not only in education but beyond. There are certain things that are already defined in certain parts of the world. Like, for example, in Europe, GDPR played a significant role in clarifying some of that type of ownership. I think what we need to accept at the basic forefront of the use of learning analytics has to be assumption of the informed consent. What we have now in higher education is that by default of, or by the act of enrolling in higher education or educational systems, learners are consenting to that. Yet the key question is that key issue is that many learners are not aware what they are consenting to. And so the question becomes is how we make our learners more aware of that. And I think we also need to make sure that our higher education institutions are relatively safe environments that learners can exercise their privacy protection agency. So even basically safe environment to make a mistake about their data themselves, so that when they are actually out there in the real world, they can actually be much more empowered. So my view is basically to that ethics is that not only do we need to have codes of practice and policies that are actually defining our steps and ways how we are dealing with ethical questions and dilemmas, but equally so, we need to be focusing on more how we can empower our learners and other stakeholders to carefully use their data.
So we've got a broader question, which is how are you going to target the areas of work within the centre, like what's on your agenda, in particular, what you'd like to accomplish in the next 5 years? What's your big picture?
Thanks so much, Catherine, for the great question, exciting question as well. What we basically, in our research program, identified are 3 general areas of focus. Number 1 is, and probably the closest to the ACER, and that is related to analytics for assessment and feedback. The second area of our interest is related to the first question I had today, at least to my response, and that is analytics for curriculum and employability. And the third one is basically analytics and data inform policy and decision making. That is really essential. What do we want to achieve within the next 5 years? First of all, we have basically 2 areas, and we need always to consider learning analytics as the field of research and the field of practice. As the field of research, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are pushing to a certain extent the boundaries of the current ways how we are assessing learners in the authentic environments, meaning that we are primarily focusing on the developmental and formative types of assessments, and potentially that can be even more predictive of the future things that are related to the learners. Consequently, we would like to establish in that whole process also something that I've been discussing with colleagues such as George Siemens, who is leading our sister, if you wish, center at the University of South Australia. And they are basically also looking into the ways of learner profiles. So I'd like to see that good connection. But at the same time, as we are developing these type of assessments, I'd like to see them used in practice. I would like to put them into the hands of as many learners and the educators, rather than we are just kind of making good progress. And I'd say the similar applies to the agenda of the other 2 areas, as I mentioned.
So picking up on a comment from Simon Buckingham-Shum, as well as passing on congratulations on the launch of the centre to Dragan, he asks about what are we learning about how we can engage academics to make effective use of these tools. And I'll add my own comment here, which is academics are very busy people. They have a lot of demands on their time. So what's the best way to get them using these tools and to be doing that effectively and efficiently from their point of view?
Thanks so much, Simon, for coming today and for the great question. Obviously, I understand that that question is also very close to your heart and all our hearts as well. As Anne indicated, academics are very busy people. But at the same time, what we are also seeing is through some of our work as well here, but previously also in Europe and other parts of the world, academics really want to get the relevant data. The key challenge, though, is that in most of the cases, we don't necessarily offer the type of data that is relevant to them. That's number 1. But equally so, what we saw throughout the pandemic as well is that many people need to initially engage with some smaller amounts of data. So in a way, we need to have that kind of scaffolded approach. Once they see that kind of relatively simple data we present them in the early days, within a few weeks, we very quickly get a very critical response. And we can see that academics already starting to get much more articulated questions and the needs and for specific targeted types of data. So to me, basically the answer is carefully engaging with them through some of the ideas as well, Simon, you are promoting on human-centered learning analytics. So the ways how we can engage much more into co-design, participatory design, and emphasizing the kind of the educator and the learner as the key stakeholders in learning analytics as we are shaping up new analytics tools.
So you mentioned that the enforced move to online learning has given you a chance to get more academics engaged. How would you say that the pandemic has influenced the research focuses of the centre in general, if they have?
Well, thanks so much, Teju, for the question. Obviously, pandemic was, as much as it was a curse for everybody, it was also equally for us who are doing learning analytics an opportunity to, first of all, be able to just engage with academics and see that much more data is being collected that is relevant for learning analytics, and we can actually do more relevant learning analytics work. The other thing basically is that it just showed to many, and for us, for example, who are studying higher education, but also even in schools, in other sectors, we've seen the same, is that just basically emphasize the importance of the data for the decision making. Today, when we have many learners who are still online, there is no much physical presence. The only way to actually see the extent to which learners are actually engaging is to see how they're participating online. And that created an enormous appetite in higher education sector. At the same time, also helped us to a certain extent roll out certain types of tools and technologies, and also helped us to actually emphasize and articulate better some of these questions that I already spoke about.
So we've got a question from Hala Nassif, who wants to know a little bit more about the Data Smart School, which you mentioned. Can you just give a bit more information about it? Does it include higher education and motivation, and where are you applying that?
Yeah, no, thanks very much for the question. That project is led by Professor Neil Selwyn, who is also a member of our center, and I'm sure he would be able to give you far more educated insight into that. The project is exclusively focused on schools, and within that project, we primarily work with secondary schools. The project aimed to understand, first of all, what are the practices that schools are taking as they are using data? What are the potentially challenges and barriers? What are the workload implications for the teachers who are supposed to collect and use data, whether we are basically increasing the workload for the teachers or not? The implications of this is that I think we are now having a fairly substantial understanding of how schools are using data, what kind of data are currently of interest to schools. We are also clearly understanding now that where we were fairly deprived in terms of research, there are significant differences in terms of the data being available and how they are used between higher education and school sectors. And we are also having some good relationships with the schools who are now ready to move into the use of data in the future.
So we've got a question from Tim, who says that the power of learning analytics is only likely to be realized if how outcomes are conveyed to the intended audience is effective. And there's a saying, given low levels of data literacy within society and even within education, I don't know if you'll agree with that or not, do you see research focused on the intersection between analytics action forming a part of the agenda for the centre?
This is absolutely terrific question. I actually agree fully with Tim. This is really essential. We really need to kind of be very careful with busy professionals as well, how we are actually saying that they are not data literate or not. And in a way, I really enjoyed conversations that I had with Tim in the past as well, who is doing some really interesting work, and we'll be able also to hear from some of his work as well he's doing in school sector here in Victoria and Australia during the conference that we are running in parallel with this central launch. But also with another colleague as well, who is part of the organization as well. Part of the thing is that we need to have the data that can tell the stories. And I think that part of the core reason why we are also having some of the outstanding researchers in our center, such as Roberto Martinez Mandolado, is to actually focus on the agenda of the, data storytelling and the ways how we can actually much more engage the user with the relevant data, and the way how it is also that data used already in some of the journalism as well. And that kind of gives us really a great and fundamental pathway how we can also do it in the future.
So there's a number of people giving congratulations. I won't pass them all on because we've got quite a lot of questions coming in now. One is around an issue with AI systems in general. How do we keep AI systems from learning the worst habits and biases of humans in the training data sets, like those from human marking? That's
a very big question. I think it's a question to which we really don't have a clear answer to. I think that's basically an open research challenge and open research question. What we obviously can do, and what has been done, and many universities are doing also, is basically understanding certain biases that we may have, but at the same time also creating that these biases are not necessarily always a bad thing. Sometimes these biases are just the professional biases that we may have about particular worldview of our subject area and the field. But at the same time, what I'm actually thinking is that we need to, and we are engaging not only just in higher education and school sector, but also in the workplace as well. We need to develop a culture in schools and higher education where we discuss the data, where we discuss the outcomes of how certain things are done with AI, so that we can better shape and create the AI. So in a way, what I'm actually saying is really how we can make AI to become part of our regular professional and business as usual conversation.
So there's two questions following up on the ethical issues, so I'm going to pick up on those. The first is ethical implications in the formation and assessment in both school or university settings. And then further, how are you going to handle ethics side in your research centre in particular?
Those are really terrific questions, and what we are doing. So basically, what are the kind of the ethical implications of this is, well, clearly, I mean, we need to understand whether our learners and users are aware what is going on with their data. So just kind of raising that awareness that there's some data, that data and that kind of data behavior can actually lead into something that is even potentially adverse effect, needs to be given to the learners. And where we are curious and would like to explore as well is, as I previously mentioned, is creating the safe environments where learners can actually explore some of these things, learn from these things while they're in schools in higher education, and can be able to avoid any penalties for that, but basically become empowered, if you wish, citizens of the future. The other critical thing for us is also that in our research and the development of new AI technologies, not only do we need to test them for accuracy, but we are also actively working on the metrics that are related to the measurement of the bias. That is, for example, related to a particular subpopulation of our learners, whether it's gender-based or international domestic students, and you can also have a number of other different areas. The other thing is that we need to become always aware that data always represents our society and the processes that are happening inside of them. Therefore, if we are having biases in some of the processes as well, and the certain things and the structures that we are dealing with in the society, data are going to be reflecting them. But there's another potentially counterpoint that learning analytics can offer, and that is that learning analytics can help us identify these biases and then work with the stakeholders on the strategies, how we can mitigate and address some of these biases.
So there's a number of questions coming in about how to engage teachers in implementing learning analytics, but also how they can, what professional development and tools are available. And there's a particularly a part of the question which I think is interesting about assuring equity of access to it, because obviously if some schools and organisations pick up on it and others don't, it might further entrench inequity in education that we're already seeing. You want to pick up on any of that, Dragan?
Yeah, no, that's a really terrific question. Obviously, what we observed, not only in higher education, but also we are seeing in the workplace, in the medical context as well, where we are working and to a certain extent in schools as well. Clearly, those organizations that have strong analytics leadership in higher education, that means like strong academic leadership for analytics, in schools, strong analytics, but in terms of teachers who are representing that, and the workplace as well, we are seeing that they have to have clinical, for example, in the workplace, if we are talking about hospitals, that kind of leadership. If they don't have that, they are not going to be able to compete, or not going to be use learning analytics, if you wish, effectively in many cases, or some of these technologies. So it's, to a certain extent, it's a chicken and egg problem. I think the situation today is far better than where we were 10 years ago when we just initially started the field of learning analytics. So there are far more open educational resources that are available that people can engage. We are also developing around the world, including us at Monash, new graduate programs that are related to it. But I think we also need to coordinate much better some of our efforts to engage and offer some of these resources across the world so that people can much easier access them. Clearly, talking about analytics and enhancing processes in developed countries where kids have far different conditions is very different to the way how certain things are happening in the global south, where learners don't necessarily have the privilege of the use of certain technologies that we have, and also the collection of some of the types of data. In 2017 and 2019, we had a report. I was basically writing the intro chapter into basically about the use of analytics in the global south, and we offered a number of different strategies and the perspectives how some of these issues can be mitigated. So I'd definitely advise to the person who has this question to maybe perhaps have a look at this report as well.
I'm going to pick up one more question before we're out of time. We have Peter talking about the teachers associations who obviously do a lot of work across early childhood, primary to secondary with curriculum, so on already. How might the centre, how are you planning in the centre to engage with those teacher associations?
That's a terrific question. Something that we definitely are very open to work with. Part of the point that I want to make here is that so far we worked mostly with the individual teachers and individual teacher schools. But what we really want, if you want to achieve the kind of the impact at scale, but also access at scale as well, is to work directly with some of the teacher associations. So I would definitely love to have a conversation with Peter and other people who can put us in touch with the relevant groups. We always look to work with them, and we will definitely be very excited to collaborate with them on some of the topics that are related to learning analytics and the use of data in schools.
Okay, and I think actually we're going to have Senator Van, I think we've got a question coming in for you just before we finish up so let me just, sorry, I'm looking at my Q&A board. A moment. Just while I'm finding that one more for you then, Dragan, first. This one's, you talked earlier about assessment and feedback, but Shazia's mentioned that research shows that emotional and social connection in feedback is really important, particularly for motivating students. So how does auto-marking and feedback address that issue?
That's a terrific question. I really was looking forward that somebody would actually ask that question. So to me, really communicating that feedback, how we are engaging with the way how people are also going to perceive that feedback and take action is really essential. In some of our work that is led by Guanliang Chen, a lecturer in our center, we are looking, for example, at politeness and the extent to which we are using polite expressions versus direct expressions when we are actually interacting with learners. And we are seeing the extent to which you need to use polite versus very direct expression depends also on the self-efficacy of the learners and their prior knowledge. What we are also looking is the way how that feedback is conveyed, not only in terms of the sentiment, but also in terms of whether you are just letting learners know whether they answered correctly certain answer, but they are also looking into the ways how we can look at the ways they are providing, for example, guidance, what to do next and how to improve their own personal self-regulation in the future, which is really essential in the communication of that feedback.
Thanks, Dragan. I will just finish up with a final question for Senator Van, which is about how open the government is to adapting this research into practice.
Thank you, Professor. On behalf of the government, I can say we're very much open, not just open to it, but very encouraging of that. A lot of the work that we're doing currently with the universities and the full research sector is how do we, not just research for research's sake, but how do we get it to commercialisation? How do we, get it into Australian company hands or students' hands, or research for pure research sake is very important. But the more of it that we can put into practice and commercialise or make use of in some other way is something that this government's putting an awful lot of effort into, not just open to it, but actively working on that. And I work not just with Monash, but with all the Victorian universities and discussing and working with ways that we can help support them do that.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator Van. And I'd like to, I think we're out of time now, so I'm going to wrap up. Sorry for the people whose questions I didn't get to. It's great to have so many people here for the launch of CoLAM today, and so much engagement and so much interest in the work that Professor Gasevic and his full team are doing and going to do into the future. So so thank everyone very much for attending. I think the live streaming is going to end now, and some of the recording will be available later. So here's the slide, and thanks everyone very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much for attending.